Remember, we're still on event 27 of 36 because in chronological sequence, Jesus evidently told a number of parables at one event. That's by the Sea of Galilee. And we've been looking at those. It's quite interesting because Matthew 13 has 8 parables. Mark 4 has 4 of the parables. And then we find Luke only has 2. So it's quite interesting as we look at it today. The parable that Jesus told was the one of the tares and the wheat, and it's found only in Matthew. And so as we look at this particular parable, we have no other parables, no similar parables in Mark or in Luke, but it is a parable that is very clearly indicated to us that it's about the kingdom of God. And we find, beginning at verse 24 of Matthew 13, we find the fact that a man went out to sow good seed. Now remember, we've already looked at the parable of the sowers, and we now have identification of good seed being sown. And it says, while men were sleeping, that is, nobody was aware that this was going on. Men were not aware that it was going on. Enemies came and sowed tares. Now, you need to understand what tares and wheat are. Wheat is a grain that bears fruit. That is, it has grain at the ends of the plant as it matures. Tares look like wheat, but never has any fruit, never has any grain. And so it says then, when the grain, when the wheat grew up or sprang up, it bore grain. That is, it became apparent that the wheat was going to have grain at the top, but the tares became evident because there was no fruit. The slaves asked, "Did you sow tares?" The owner of the property and the one that sowed the tares said, "No, I did not." The enemy has done this, and we want you to go ahead and allow them to grow together. The slaves asked, do you want us to pull it up? Do you want us to tear it out? And the owner of the field said, no, let them grow together. And then at harvest, we'll take the tares out first, bind them and burn them, and we'll take later the wheat with its grain, with its fruit, and it'll be brought into my barn. Now, obviously, you've probably discerned exactly what this means. God sows good seed. That's lesson number 1. He doesn't sow any bad seed. Number 2, Satan sows bad seed. He's represented here by the enemies. The third truth is that good and bad were in the same field, and we know that they're good and bad because one is bearing fruit while the other is not. Now that's really quite interesting because how many times have you seen in scriptures, you'll know them by their works, you'll know them by their fruit, you'll know good fruit from bad fruit as well. And here the tares, of course, would have no fruit, and so it would be very obvious which was wheat and which was tares. But the owner of the field doesn't want to tear up the tares because he says it might destroy some of the good grain. Now, think about this for a minute. If we go beyond the wheat and the tares illustration and we think about Christians or ministers being either good wheat or tares, if in fact all of the tares were exposed, people would start to become skeptical about who is a good Christian, who is a non-Christian, who is a good minister, and who is a false prophet. And it might become so bad with so many tares being sown in the field that it would discredit and cause question about who was good and who was bad, and which was tare and which was wheat. I think it's quite interesting when you think about it. And so God allows, let me say that again, God allows. He didn't sow the tares. He clearly said that. No, I didn't sow tares. but he allows them to grow together until the harvest. There's going to be a lot of TV pastors, a lot of those that call themselves Christians who are going to be revealed at that last day. And it tells us here very clearly that God knows which are which. And at the harvest time, he will separate them. And those that are false prophets, false teachers, false pastors, false Christians will be burned up because of the judgment. And those that are good wheat, those that are fruitful Christians, those that are fruitful pastors, they'll be separated out and placed, watch this, I love it, and placed into God's barn, his kingdom. It's a beautiful parable when you think about it. And it's a picture of probably no more evident than today when we have so many false Christians, so many false preachers, so many false prophets. And they're growing together with those that are legitimate, those that are good and that are bearing fruit. But my friends, don't be frustrated because there's a day of judgment coming. There is a harvest day, and they'll be separated, each to their own place. And that's my thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.